The Transportation Committee will resume from recess. In front of us is House File 5. Thank you to everybody that had to readjust their schedule. Sorry about that. We're just giving the amendments 15 minutes or less before previous committee, but we're good to go. If we don't have any housekeeping items, Representative Joy, please present and move your House File 5 to the Tax Committee, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House File 5 moves to the Tax Committee. And a little bit about my bill.
Yes, please introduce your bill and.
Okay. This is making Minnesota more affordable for seniors and everybody. In this bill, it reduces tax on Social Security. That's what we promised at the doors here the last 2 years. That's what we promised before. We didn't get that done. This is doing that. This is getting rid of the delivery fee. This is the first time in Minnesota we've had tax on clothing because of the delivery fee. This is getting rid of that. This is making Minnesota more affordable. This is also taking the gas tax, automatic inflator on gas taxes, and getting rid of that. You know, today, it's put in place that we automatically increase the gas tax. You know, us as legislators are supposed to be down here doing our job to make sure that we're doing what we need to by reading reports and doing everything across the state. You know, as we continue to put more and more gas tax on Minnesota, our bordering states are selling more fuel, and then people are living in Minnesota, and we're not getting the road funding that we talk about in this bill. This also does an oversight and a study for us to look at tab fees. They've went up 36% in Minnesota, and looks at the neighboring states and does some comparison and understanding where we stand in the state to other states. So with that, Mr. Chair, I will move HF 5 to the Tax Committee.
Thank you for that overview. I believe there's an A1 amendment that's an author's amendment.
Yes, A1 is,
Please move that amendment.
I will move this amendment to follow the bill. It's page 9, line 10. After A, insert using existing resources.
Thank you. Generally, an author's amendment is non-controversial. Those in favor of the author's amendment, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? The motion prevails. The A1 is adopted. With Do you have the list of testifiers? Okay, Representative Joy, your bill is in front of the committee in the shape that you'd like it. We will proceed with public
Chair.
testimony.
Mr. Chair, Representative Sensenbrenner can't see or hear anything on the Zoom.
They're working on it, and I apologize, but I don't want to hold up the whole committee. Do you want us to wait a little bit? I don't know what the problem is, but they've been working on it for about 15 minutes.
Okay. Kegel.
Lead Cagle?
Mr. Chair, since I'm the non-voting member, I would really prefer if Representative Sensenbrenner could get on the Zoom, because she is one of the voting members of the committee.
Let me take a quick 2-minute recess, see what the problem is before we proceed. That's fine.
Thank you.
in this order, it was on the agenda, Mr. Barthel, Mr. Newstead, Mr. Berg, Moberg, Ms. Donahue. I think Mr. O'Rourke sent a letter, so he's not going to be in person. Mr. Lund, Ms. Finn, Commissioner Beer, Commissioner Dobbenberger, and we'll keep going on there. Commissioner Dobbenberger, is she with us? Out of respect for the for your office, why don't you go first, please? Sorry, Steve, you get, oops, excuse me. Mr. Barthel, you get bumped just for a little bit. Commissioner, I appreciated the letter that you sent earlier. I've reviewed it, but please proceed with your testimony and re-identify yourself for the committee and the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Nancy Dobbenberger, privileged to serve as Commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Transportation. Thank you for the opportunity to share some thoughts on House File 5. In 2023, the legislature took important steps toward addressing transportation investment needs. And if the legislature enacts reductions in planned transportation investments that would result from House File 5, pavement, bridge, and other roadway infrastructure conditions will suffer. These spending cuts will result in fewer transportation construction projects, and then if these projects can go forward without cuts from House File 5, they will result in good-paying jobs for Minnesotans during construction and then provide years-long benefits to the traveling public. All transportation users will see safety improvements. And as noted in the letter that we provided to the committee, inflationary pressures continue to increase. The construction cost index increased by 231% since 1999. And system usage is returning to pre-pandemic levels, once again on the rise. If Minnesota wants to continue attracting residents and being economically viable, we need to have resources available. Transportation projects are expensive. So for instance, thanks to the support of the state legislature and federal government, we're currently investing hundreds of millions of dollars in the I-494 corridor. As I also pointed out in the letter provided to the committee, the Trump administration has already begun the process of clawing back federal funds provided through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, known as IIJA. So finally, Mr. Chair and committee members, I'd like to point out that even with existing levels of transportation spending, we estimate there is an annual funding gap of almost $2 billion just for road networks that receive funding through the Highway User Tax Distribution Fund. And that's along with county and township roads and city streets that do not receive HUTD funding. I strongly encourage you to keep that in mind as you debate cuts in transportation revenues. Thank you.
Sorry, I got sidetracked for a second. Thank you for your testimony. We do, I'm going to have, because you're the Commissioner of MnDOT, I'm going to have representatives, if they have questions for you, do that now. Otherwise, and then you can proceed with, I know you have a very busy schedule and we've taken up a lot of your time today. So we'll start with Representative Olson, and then for the other testifiers, we'll wait for member questions until after.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Commissioner. Question for you. Does the department know how much money they spend on things that are not written in statute? For example, cosmetics for bridges, if you got cool stones, or you got nice little metal fence work where it could be a concrete barrier. Do you have an idea how much money we spend on paint for the noise barriers where they're using treated wood and the paint doesn't stay on there anyways? That's got to be at least $10 to $15 a gallon. Do you have an idea of how much money is spent on non-essential road and bridge maintenance and creation?
Commissioner Dobbenberg.
Mr. Chair, Representative Olson, thank you for that question. So when it comes to bridge aesthetics, it's a very small portion of the overall cost that's allowed for bridge aesthetics. in terms of what that's total over the years. If that's something you're interested in, we could get a value on that. I will just say, when it comes to paint is a protective system, not only for noise walls, but for steel structures. So that is a necessity when it comes to maintenance of roadway infrastructure.
Thank you, Commissioner Lead Cagle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And maybe this is more of a clarification for Mr. Lee, but can you tell us exactly what the reduction to transportation funding would be for the biennium for these, with these cuts?
Mr. Lee.
Mr. Chair and Representative Cagle, so in your packets, you should have a spreadsheet, and it is a physical summary of House File 5. The three tax changes include the Social Security subtraction, the delivery fee elimination, and a capping of the gas tax indexing. So for the two transportation items, the delivery fee generates about $45 million in fiscal year 2026 and about $55 million each year thereafter. That's the estimate from the Department of Revenue. And capping the gas tax increase would decrease HUTD revenue in fiscal year 2026, $9.6 million in fiscal year 2027, at $26.3 million in fiscal year 2028, $39.8 million, and in fiscal year 2029 at $62.8 million. Those two transportation-related items combined for the 26-27 biennium would be a decrease in tax revenue of about 1.31 or 131 million in the 2026-27 biennium, and 112 million in the 28 and 29 biennium.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Lead Cagle.
All right, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Dobbenberger. My understanding is that trunk highway bonds are backed by the trunk highway fund. So not only are we going to see a reduction in the number of jobs that we can do with trunk highway cash, but also with the amount of money the amount of trunk highway bonds we'll be able to let. Is that correct?
Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Representative Cagle. Yes, the smaller the revenues would be to the HUDT fund, then the less funding in trunk highways that we would have to pay back bonds ultimately.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. So just, so that would be a substantial decrease to our transportation budget in a time where the needs are great. And so I'm just want to make that point.
Thank you. Commissioner, I appreciate your concern about reductions in this. Representative Joy, as you put this bill together, it's probably not its final iteration. What is your intention to reduce the revenues in the transportation fund with this bill?
Thank you, Chair Koznick. No, it's not. It's a bill in progress to continue to work and make sure that we hold, don't lose accountability to make sure things are funded for the trunk highway.
Thank you. I think as we talked about the bill, your intent is that all the different new factors and programs within that were created were to remain whole, is what I think you
Correct.
had intended. Thank you. Commissioner, I do have a question. You shared your concerns about the reductions in this. It's not the author's intent. Do you have similar concerns about other mandates that have been imposed on transportation in recent years that increase the cost of transportation significantly and make some projects almost impossible?
Thank you for that question, Mr. Chair. No, not at this time.
Okay, we'll revisit some of the mandates then. But I think the department should look strongly at some of the other mandates, not just reductions, which I hope get ironed out of this bill because it's not in its last iteration, but the leakage and the robbery out of the trunk highway we talked about this morning, but also other mandates that make it nearly impossible to maintain our road infrastructure. Representative Green, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Commissioner, Chair, or Representative Joy. I have a question for the Commissioner. So within the feedback that you gave, you mentioned that the lack of investments that would be pulled from if the passage of this bill would have a pretty significant impact on infrastructure conditions to roads and to bridges. Can you share what the state of the roads in Minnesota and that impact that it has on road safety for people traveling on roads? Can you make that connection for us? Thank you.
Commissioner Daubenberger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Green. Yes, we can provide to the committee more information on our pavement and bridge conditions too, if you're interested, and what impacts to the Trunk Highway Fund, well, the entire system could be, but specifically the Trunk Highway Fund, we've got some information on. I can provide those to you.
Thank you.
Representative Green, follow up.
Thank you. Yeah, just a follow-up, and this is for Representative Joy. I'm concerned that this bill really impacts our road conditions, just roads alone. And my question to you is, how do we measure that up? Because the repairs need to still happen. So if, from my understanding, repairs that are neglected actually then take more funds to fix, because then we have to do replacement. The maintaining piece would be, I don't know how we couldn't eliminate it with the passing of this bill. Thank you.
Representative Joy.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Representative Green. You know, it's interest for my district when you talk about this, and we're going to take money from road funds, and how do we repair them? You know, I live in the Lakes Country. I have a ton of people that are North Dakota plates that buy gas at Costco across that river because Moorhead don't have the businesses over there. Everybody's buying gas cheaper across there, so we're not getting the gas tax of everybody traveling in my district, because a lot of people, even people that live in my bedroom community and work in Fargo-Moorhead, buy gas across that river, and they're coming back over. That's really something that's impacting us today. So adding more tax to the gas or adding more of these fees and pushing people across that bridge, I don't think we're winning this road funding by having North Dakota be cheaper on their taxes and cheaper on their gas price by 20, 30 cents. So I think it's really a concern. We have to really study this whole thing. This isn't going to be the final bill, but I think we got to continue working on it. But I'm also concerned with what's happening across the bridge.
Thank you, Commissioner. I don't believe there's a question for the Commissioner.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mr. Murphy, Representative Murphy.
Thank you for being here. My question is kind of goes a little bit off of the mandate question. You know, we have the Technical Advisory Board, and they make recommendations on our new mandates with regard to road construction. Can those reductions in cost be made up partly, the reduction we talked about, you know, the 131 million? Can it be made up in part by the recommendations of that Technical Advisory Board? Aren't we adding cost with some of those recommendations?
Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Murphy. We are happy to work with committee members as you continue to discuss options for transportation funding.
Thank you. Follow up, Representative Murphy.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the Technical Advisory Board is all, appointed people. That's one of the conversations we had last session, is how we think there should be a little bit of an input from the elected people. But there was a lot of costs that were talked about by adding, bike trails, different things to our roads. And that certainly will increase the cost of roads. And we're talking about this short ton of dollars. Isn't that part of the equation too? We want to build roads. We don't want to go without roads in our townships. We want our bridges to be there for us, but that's part of the cost. And right now, we're having some money. Instead, we're having problems with the federal, the federal government maybe not supporting us the way we have. So we need to look at all those things, but bottom line, to your concern, we definitely need to be looking at making sure we have the money for roads and bridges.
Thank you, Representative Murphy, and I do share your concern about mandates that have been placed on those that build roads in our local units of government, where building an intersection or a certain segment of road, Commissioner, I hope you are aware, some of the mandates that were passed will increase the cost anywhere from 25 to much as 40%, I've heard from county engineers. That is a concern and should be as much a concern as any reductions in revenues, but in fact, we've raised a whole bunch of revenues in the last biennium. I want to let the commissioner proceed with her day, but we have questions, two more questions, and then we'll move on to the rest of the testifiers, please. So Representative Jones, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner, I have a question about, making sure that we are recognizing that people need different ways of getting around. And so I'm curious how this might impact transit, especially in greater Minnesota.
Commissioner Daubenberger.
Thank you for that question, Mr. Chair and Representative Jones. So the Transit Advantage account is looking to others here who are a little more knowledgeable, but I believe is for the metropolitan area. And so your question on transit for greater Minnesota, unsure how that's affected here.
Commissioner, we can also, we don't mean to put you on the hot seat necessarily, but Mr. Lee might be able to put in, but you're welcome to follow up with the committee
Yes,
with
thanks.
a little more specific response, if that's okay, Representative Jones. We're going to move to Representative Berg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This question is for the author. So in my other life away from...
Representative Berg, if I could just interrupt for a second then. Commissioner, I'm going to let you excuse yourself. I appreciate your testimony, and if you could follow up with some of the member questions, that would be appreciated. And then Representative Berg, sorry to interrupt, but just want to excuse the commissioner and then proceed with your question to the author.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So...
But then we're going to try to save author questions towards the end, and then we'll proceed with the rest of the testimony, the testifiers that came here. But we'll let you go with this one. That was my mistake. So go ahead, ask your question, and then we'll listen to the rest of the testimony, and then we'll come back to member questions, okay?
Okay, for real? Okay.
My fault.
No problem. So for the author, and we may get to this, so I apologize if I'm jumping the gun. As I was going to say, in my other life, I'm a flight attendant. So when we land and I overnight in a city, I can always tell by the state of the roads how robust their tax system is to provide for the resources for good infrastructure. And here in Minnesota, I think we can all agree when we drive on our roads and bridges, it's relatively a good experience, potholes here and there from weather, but there is a very, very distinct difference state by state. And so my question is, and maybe we will get to this later, but as you're repealing all of these different revenue sources to keep our roads and our bridges, especially what's happening at the federal level with the IIJA money, all these reductions everywhere, flooding in. What is your actual plan to fund our roads and bridges in the sort of way that we are used to here in Minnesota, which is one of the benefits living here in Minnesota, everything from our trails to our streets. And I appreciate your story about your district. We're all obviously very concerned about each of our districts in most of our discussions, but we are making decisions statewide here as a body. So curious about what your plan is to fund what we are used to in this state with all of these repeals. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Joy, real briefly.
Okay, thank you, Chair. And thank you, Representative Berg. That's one of the things with this bill is work in progress. Last year we had an $18.5 billion surplus that we should have put probably some of this funding on our top ticket to get done to make sure our infrastructure is done instead of putting $10 billion more in taxes to everybody in Minnesota. So when we had a surplus, even we don't have a surplus now, but now we're worried about how we're going to fund this. We should have probably made that our priority last year. We didn't. The legislature decided to raise tax by $10 billion on people. So obviously, when you raise tax $10 billion on people and you spend $18.5 billion surplus, we're going to have to work this bill through because obviously we don't have that $18.5 billion surplus this year. I wish we would have really put this as a priority, but I'm also concerned with adding these taxes and not making Minnesota affordable. We're taking from our seniors. We're making Minnesota, as you travel the roads, more expensive. And we're taking the districting, yes, we understand, Metro Minneapolis, but there's the surrounding communities where they're buying gas across the bridges. And that's happening. And we have to fix that. So this bill's a work in progress on some of these parts. You know, the Social Security isn't a work in progress. That should be pretty simple to make sure our seniors can afford to live. But when we add more taxes and more fees to people, it affects us. You know, Minnesota Propane, I don't know if they're here, but they'll talk about these fees. That there's gonna be some work in progress, and I'm willing to work with different authors or whoever wants to work with me on this bill. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We're going to proceed with testimony, try to get back on track a little bit. So back to the list that I laid out earlier. So Representative Berg, don't feel bad. Mr. Barthel got the old switcheroo as well. So please introduce yourself to the committee and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Chair Kosnick and members of the committee. My name is Steve Bartle. I am Director of Government Relations with the Minnesota Grocers Association. The Minnesota Grocers Association has been representing Minnesota's food industry for over 125 years. We're the only trade association that represents our state's food industry from farm to fork. Our membership includes over 300 member companies, totaling more than 1,300 locations across the state. I'm here to express our strong support for the provisions in House File 5 that would repeal the highest consumer delivery fee in the nation, and that has proven to be an inefficient way to raise revenue and impractical to administer. We testified in 2023 that this new fee would create significant challenges and costs for businesses, and now that the fee has been implemented, we see that our concerns were justified. We're hearing from our retail members that the cost of updating point-of-sale systems, in addition to the number of hours it takes for staff to track and administer this fee, costs businesses thousands of dollars a year. This far exceeds the amount that they are collecting and remitting to the state in revenue. Many common and essential items in local grocery stores are subject to the delivery fee. These include all taxable food products, paper goods, medicines, hygiene products, clothing, cookware, and other vital necessities. Products that are subject to the delivery fee do not align with established sales tax categories. So now a retailer's point-of-sale system must include separate classifications to account for taxable versus non-taxable items, as well as products that are subject to the delivery fee versus those that are not subject to the fee. The added cost of system upgrades and administration impact an operation's bottom line and are ultimately reflected in the price of goods on store shelves. It's also important to recognize that the impacts of policies like the delivery fee and other mandates aren't felt equally by all businesses. Smaller retailers bear a significantly heavier burden compared to large corporations. In 2023, the average profit margin for an independent grocery store was just about 1.6%. Such a slim margin makes it impossible for a small business to absorb a 50-cent fee and the costs that come with it. International retailers like Walmart have the ability to absorb these costs and spread them across their 4,600 U.S. stores. However, small family-owned businesses don't have that luxury. With ongoing market consolidation and increasing dominance of large corporations, these new costs and regulations continue to put small businesses at a disadvantage. This regressive fee is also has a disproportionate impact on lower income and disabled consumers who often rely on delivery services for their essential needs. Every one of the projected $55 million collected annually by this fee comes directly out of the pockets of Minnesota consumers who are already facing increased cost of living. We thank the committee for considering House File 5 and hope that this legislation will help create a more competitive environment for Minnesota small businesses while making life more affordable and accessible for all consumers. Thank you, and I'll be around for any questions.
Thank you very much. Our next testifier is Mr. Newstad, Minnesota Retailers Association. Welcome to the committee. State your name and identify for the record, please. Proceed.
Thank you, Chair Kosnick and Lead Kegel, members of the committee. My name is Bruce Newstead with the Minnesota Retailers. We represent about 1,200 stores across the state. Those range from family-owned Main Street retailers to regional retailers to national retailers. Most of those retailers will provide some level of delivery services that Minnesotans rely on every day. I'm here today to support the delivery fee repeal. Probably no surprise they're contained in House File 5. Thank you, Representative Joy, for that. We do understand the goal behind the fee. And we also recognize that we need good roads and bridges to get products and people and workers to stores, but we just feel that the delivery fee is the wrong mechanism to get the job done here in Minnesota. I believe that the fee actually disproportionately affects Minnesotans who depend on delivery, not as a convenience, but as a necessity, such as our seniors, our individuals with disabilities, people with health conditions, and households that just don't have access to transportation. The $100 threshold exemption that you've heard about was really meant to lessen that impact, but in practice, it's really just an arbitrary number. For retailers, as you just heard, the implementation of the delivery fee has created some operational and financial challenges. Businesses, small and large, have had to build entirely new compliance systems to track, collect, and remit the fee. And really, that's an administrative burden, especially on the backs of small businesses. In fact, some businesses, as you've heard, are unable to afford to build those systems or are worried about being uncompetitive with their pricing. So they choose not to charge the consumer that fee. Rather, they do an after-the-fact calculation or remit the fee that should have been collected to the state. Even more challenging because payment processors charge transaction fees on the full amount of a purchase price, including the delivery fee. At the end of the day, a retailer really ends up with less money than they collected. They end up with less than that 50 cents that they collected, yet they're still responsible for remitting that full 50 cents to the state. This means actually in the end, businesses are losing money on administering the fee. The fee also creates some confusion for consumers when it comes to the threshold, and as you just heard, relative to what's included and what's not included. The fee appears on a receipt as a road improvement and food delivery fee, even though most prepared foods and delivered foods are exempt. And this confusion really is highlighted for consumers, but it's the retailer actually who bears the brunt of those complaints and the ire of that consumer confusion. I'll just end by saying Colorado is the only other state that has this mechanism so far. And since Colorado has passed it, they're having to have the same conversations we are. How do you fix it? How do you make it better? How do you correct a system that's maybe not working perfect or underperforming? And we think rather than sort of piecemealing trying to fix this, it's a good idea to repeal the delivery fee and look for an alternative source of funding to support our roads and bridges that we need in this state. So ultimately, this fee places an unnecessary burden on Minnesotans who rely on delivery services. It creates major compliance challenges for businesses, as you've heard, and causes consumer confusion. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the time today.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Next, we have from the Minnesota Association of Townships. We're going to proceed with we're going to go through the testifiers and then, yeah. And then we also have 9 amendments too, so just keep that in mind. Welcome to the committee, sir. Please state your name for the record and your association and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members of the committee. My name is Gramberg Moberg. I'm a staff attorney with the Minnesota Association of Townships. We represent roughly 1,776 townships in the state of Minnesota. There are about 900,000 Minnesotans who live in townships. It's about 16% of the state's population. Our communities are disproportionately rural and disproportionately lower tax base. Nevertheless, we are responsible for about 41% of Minnesota's road network. That's about 23,000 miles, a little bit less if you're doing the math. Now, it's a heavy lift, and it's largely borne by local property taxes. Of the $230 million that we spent on roads and bridges in 2022, which was the last available year, the state provided roughly $40 million of that. The strain on this network is real and growing more serious over time. As recently as 2023, we had a member, Lena Township in Cass County, that actually dissolved as it was unable to pay for its roads. Now, that was a turnback situation, so it was relatively specialized, but it did happen. Now, in addition, for the first time in years, the town bridge account was not sufficient to cover projects. Now, my understanding is that MnDOT has been able to move some money around to various accounts to get some of those projects moving, but there were 4 projects that would have been unfunded without this action, which is fundamentally a Band-Aid. Nevertheless, we appreciate being thought of, and we appreciate the small increases that this bill represents. We are in favor of finding reliable and dedicated transportation funding for the needs of townships and the citizens of rural Minnesota. In short, we are pretty similarly situated to the small cities, and we'd echo their comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Next, from the Transportation Alliance, Margaret Donahoe. Then we'll go to Mr. Lynn and Ms. Finn. Thank you for being with us. You're no stranger to the committee, but please introduce yourself for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, my name is Margaret Donahoe. I'm the director of the Minnesota Transportation Alliance. The Alliance is a statewide coalition. It includes all jurisdictions and all modes. We support improvements to Minnesota's transportation system across the state. And we're here to express some concerns about this legislation, which would reduce overall transportation funding. As you have heard, Minnesota faces a huge funding gap on all of our roads and bridges for counties, cities, townships, the state. And there are only so many options for addressing the funding shortfall. The fuel tax, the license tab fees, the sales tax on motor vehicles, the constitutionally dedicated sources can only be increased so much, as we've heard. And otherwise, property taxes, as you've just heard, bear the burden when state revenue is not adequate. The general fund has been historically very difficult for transportation to rely on and currently is facing some serious challenges. So there aren't a lot of options, which is why we strongly supported and continue to support the delivery fee as a new way to raise revenue for transportation. And all states are in the same situation, struggling to maintain their transportation systems. Currently, another 10 states are considering the retail delivery fee. Maryland's governor is proposing a 75-cent fee. Bills have been introduced in Hawaii for a 50-cent fee, Mississippi a 30-cent fee. Indiana would allow local governments to implement a delivery fee. New York, Ohio, Nevada, and Washington are all looking at adding this revenue source as their fuel tax revenue starts to decline because of the lack of increasing the rate or indexing it to keep up with inflation. A big factor in the lower revenue amount in Minnesota is the $100 order threshold. But we believe that this fee can be improved, and eliminating the $100 threshold would make a big improvement. It would make it easier for businesses now that they have set up systems to collect the fee. It would make it less complicated and allow more revenue to be collected without the $100 threshold. The bottom line is we just can't afford to lose any revenue options for our transportation system. Businesses need a transportation system that works. Deficient bridges, crumbling pavements, traffic congestion, all cost businesses real money as they try to move products and people and conduct business in the state. Investing in Minnesota's transportation system will create jobs, support businesses, and allow the state's economy to grow. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Donahoe. Next, we have Mr. Mike Lund with Metro Cities.
Mr.
Please
Chair,
proceed.
members, good afternoon. For the record, my name is Mike Lund with Metro Cities. We represent the collective interests of cities in the 7-county metropolitan region. Metro Cities supports the Transportation Advancement Account as it provides sustainable funding for non-MSA city streets in cities of all population sizes. When compared to state and federal spending, local government transportation spending is the largest area of spending in the metropolitan region, and most transportation revenue in the metro region is provided through local property taxes, as you've heard. The MSA Municipal State Aid System, that program is a critical source of revenue for cities above 5,000 in population, and 83 of the 151 MSA eligible cities are in the metro area. The larger cities assistance account contained within the TAA provides a crucial additional source of revenue for MSA cities to construct and maintain roads throughout their local system. The creation of the TAA also provided cities under 5,000 with a reliable source of transportation revenue, and this was for the first time since that small cities assistance account was created. The 7-county metro area does have over 50 cities in that under 5,000 population group, so we support that funding as well. While the Met Council and our other transit providers in our region can speak more to how the change to the regional tax allocation will impact transit, we heard a little bit about that earlier today. I did want to highlight another component to that shift. The Met Council, of their portion, there's a 5% set aside for active transportation projects, and that's allocated by the Transportation Advisory Board. In 2024, all but 2 projects that came from that 5% set aside went to cities in our region. So a reduction in the council allocation there would also have an impact on potential opportunities for cities for their bike ped projects. With that said, Metro Cities is willing and looking forward to conversations as this session progresses, so we can keep our cities whole and also make sure the whole pie for transportation funding stays robust coming out of 2023. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Ms. Finn, League of Minnesota Cities. And we do, I was just made aware, we do have to be out of the room at 6:30 for the video audio. Is that right? So we're going to proceed very quickly. Thanks.
Mr. Chair and members, my name is Ann Finn. I represent the League of Minnesota Cities. The League is an association of 841 of Minnesota's 856 cities. Thank you for this opportunity to testify. The League was a strong supporter of the creation of the Transportation Advancement Account, or TAA, and the revenue sources that the 2023 legislation identified to fund the account. These sources included the retail delivery fee and the phasing in of the sales tax on motor vehicle parts. For cities, the TAA provides funds for a system of roads that previously were not on a state funding formula and were funded solely with property taxes and special assessments. This system includes all city streets within cities with populations below 5,000. That's approximately 700 of our cities. And roads not funded with municipal state aid dollars in larger cities. We would be happy to spend time in this committee describing the municipal street system and the shortcomings of the existing funding sources. Additionally, the League has a longstanding position of support for indexing of the gas tax to account for inflationary pressures contributing to the cost of construction, maintenance, and reconstruction projects. We oppose repealing the indexing that was enacted less than 2 years ago. In short, we're concerned that House File 5 prematurely modifies the TAA and other 2023 transportation funding measures. We respectfully request that you give the 2023 legislation more time and that you only consider changes after funding streams stabilize. We would appreciate the opportunity to work with the author and other stakeholders before this legislation advances. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Finn. Next, we have Commissioner Dave Beer. He is here.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. I should say good evening.
Yeah, Commissioner, yeah, please proceed and introduce yourself. Welcome to the committee. It's
Thank you.
Good to have you here as a representative of Scott County, a little bit of my district. So welcome to the committee. Please identify yourself and proceed for the testimony.
Thank you, Chair and committee members. Dave Beer, Chair of the Scott County Board, our cute little adorable Scott County. We have a few thoughts and concerns about the particular bill. I want to be specific. We definitely want to make Minnesota affordable. This is nothing specific to the gas tax necessarily or the Social Security tax. But I will have to say that when county engineers hear about pots of money potentially funding, they become a little unnerved. It's a big deal. As you know, our only mechanism to deliver highway projects is through property tax. And so what we really want to do is break that cycle of our only impact is to improve or upgrade or however you want to call it. Some people want to pay a high property tax, others don't. And then I hear from this House about property tax relief. Our only way of levying is by property tax. And so we need to find ways to break these cycles. How do we make Minnesota affordable again? That's the great news that you get to deal with down here in St. Paul. But I just need to let you know, like I said, it's concerns that when pots of money, when different levers and different buttons are pushed, that does impact what comes down to the county. And so any way that we can mitigate that, we want to be, and I've always mentioned this, we are always more than willing to be available to talk to people on the ground, boots on the ground that are delivering some of these services of what these kind of impacts make. We're talking about transportation today, but fill in the blank another day, about what that really makes a difference in people's lives down at the county level. We are open. We would love to entertain a committee, a group, a set, whoever you see fit to come and see what we deal with when these kinds of changes make place. So a couple little things. 4 pages, you can attest to that. I'm going to boil it down to a couple of things. We want to be kept whole. However you see fit, that the counties are made and kept whole so that we can continue delivering these services. That's what we're after. A couple little just facts and figures. Your own fiscal note shows an assumption that metro counties get 21.5% of the county state aid or CASA fund, and yet the metro area contributes over 60% of the revenues. So not to mention the metro area supports 65% of the state's employment. We understand this is the age-old debate of metro versus outstate. I mean, I'm an outstate kind of guy. I'm a 218er from the range, right? But we do need to figure out that the metro area is an economic driver, and we need to find a reasonable share of that highway user trust fund to improve the transportation system. Without this balance in transportation funding, it harms the metro area and ultimately the state. MnDOT Metro District, just a few little fun facts and figures. The MnDOT Metro District during the last decade had received about 40% of the trunk highway fund. Metro counties received approximately 21.5% of the highway user trust fund. Due to the past inadequacies of metro area transportation funding, metro counties are often leading trunk highway projects and carrying a significant financial burden, necessitating the implementation of the local sales tax. Scott County, just as an example, we've invested over $100 million in the last decade on trunk highway projects. A few of the examples you might know: 41 and 169, 282 and 169, 13 and 101, 59 and 169, 5 and 13, many, if not all of these state highways. So as it boils down, lastly, before we start to alter transportation funding, there needs to be a dialogue with the people that deliver these programs. Transportation engineers here. As a state as a whole, we need to put less burden for delivery of regional transit and highway projects on the counties. Transit, the 23 bill, sure, it's got some tweaks that would love to see. We don't want to take transit back. 23 took transit and put it where it needs to be. Counties do not want to deal with transit. So we are open to have you to come anytime you see fit. We're very much looking forward to working with Author in this committee. We want to be here as a help. We just want to make sure that you are aware of the decisions that are made here impact the citizens of Minnesota all over the state, metro and outstate. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. I do appreciate your in-person attendance here today and your comments.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have Mr. Friedson from Lyuna, then we'll have Move Minnesota Action, and then Mr. Wagenius from the Sierra Club. So welcome to the committee. Appreciate that you're here. And we are supposed to keep testimony to about 2 minutes. So I gave the good commissioner a little leeway because I have to see him at meetings.
Thank you, Chair Kosnick, Lead Kegel, and members of the committee. My name is Chris Fretzen. I'm with Lyuna. Proud to speak on behalf of the Minnesota transportation trades today. So the laborers, operating engineers, carpenters, ironworkers, and the cement masons. We are proud to represent tens of thousands of construction workers who build and maintain our roads and bridges across the state of Minnesota. The comprehensive transportation funding package passed by the legislature in 2023 was a major step towards making our members and all Minnesotans safer, creating thousands of family-supporting careers, and boosting our local economies. However, MnDOT's road funding gap report shows we need more funding for roads and bridges, not less. And we strongly oppose eliminating, reducing, and delaying existing dedicated revenue streams for roads and bridges. Speaking for Lyuna, we support making electric vehicle drivers pay their fair share by increasing the EV fee to $200 per year. We support continuing to index the gas tax to inflation to help keep up with rising costs. Elimination of the road maintenance fee on retail deliveries, as proposed in House File 5, would cut $100 million in road and bridge funding just over the next 2 years. If we were to increase the EV fee, increase the gas tax with inflation, those two things would only raise about $4 to $5 million per year. So I think that comparison helps understand the gravity of the proposed cut. The delivery fee is a common sense way to pay for our roads and bridges. Consider the wear and tear that these delivery vehicles are doing to our roads and bridges every day. And understand that as a consumer, the alternative to a delivery would mean spending more time and money going to the store. We don't get what we don't pay for, and that's the reason why our roads and bridges are falling apart. So now is not the time to cut road and bridge funding. Let's keep our members working and make our roads and bridges safer for all Minnesotans. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your testimony. Next, we have Mr. Norcati.
Yep.
Excellent. Welcome to the committee. Reintroduce yourself and for the record and the group that you represent, and then proceed with your testimony.
Absolutely. I'm Nas Norcati. I'm the state policy lead for Move Minnesota Action. in honor of everyone's energy levels today, I have an expedited version of my remarks. It's an honor to be here once again. I'm here to oppose the repeal of the delivery fee and of indexing the gas taxes proposed in HFO 5. Over here, we fight for walking, biking, and transit because they're part of making our communities more welcoming, affordable, and connected, because they help ensure families and workers can get to jobs, healthcare, and also school. As large corporations continue to use our public infrastructure with upgraded electric heavy-grade fleets and ramp up deliveries in service of their bottom line, delivery fees and indexing the gas tax are an important part of helping our state invest in more affordable transportation options and deal with the cost to the broader public that comes with the wear and tear of our roads. Electrification is a good thing for our air quality and for our climate, but we need to make sure that whether vehicles are electric or gas-based, they're contributing their fair share to our transportation budget. In a time where every dollar in our budget matters, we need to be ensuring that we have the resources to invest in the walking, biking, and transit systems that make our communities more accessible and affordable to our families, so that community members can walk to their local hardware store or to the bus or to get groceries, supporting local businesses and keeping dollars in their communities. And the last thing I'll say is that I used to drive a Silverado 1500 05 V8 6 liters. I think only half the caucus knows that that's the best car in the world. But I definitely made a tiny dent in our roads. But me and my gas vehicle did get properly taxed, so I did my part. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, appreciate your testimony. Last on the list is Mr. Wagenius, the Sierra Club. Go ahead and proceed in identifying yourself and proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Peter Wagenius, Legislative Director for Sierra Club North Star Chapter, representing 50,000 members and supporters working to help our state's communities flourish through environmental protection. At 12:30 today, I sent committee members a letter from Sierra Club and 15 other organizations who advocated for the historic 2023 transportation law. It looks like this. Chair Zelli's willingness to take one for the team notwithstanding, the governor's proposed ongoing $32 million funding cut would drastically undermine the promised expansion of bus service and bus rapid transit, which was a centerpiece of the 2023 law. The same arguments in that coalition letter also apply to the even larger proposed cut in Section 8, page 9 of House File 5, which would cut transit funding and redirect it to metro counties, some of whom aren't asking for this, and all of whom already got an increase in 2023. Just like the 2023 debate over transit funding, the effort to redirect monies to counties is also a sequel to the 2023 debate. Notably, 2 of the counties who would be recipients of this money already have authority from the legislature to raise their own revenue. All counties in Minnesota have the ability to raise transportation dollars from 2 sources, a wheelage tax and a half-cent sales tax. On this map, which the pages could distribute to the members, you can see that many counties across the state have used the authorities the legislature provided. But 2 metro counties had not used their authority back in 2023 and still haven't. In effect, those 2 counties have said to you they wanted new revenue, but they didn't want to raise the revenue themselves. They wanted legislators to take the tough vote that they wouldn't take. Transit riders don't have those options, and neither does Metro Transit. They need your support. The legislature in 2023 was right to reject a redirection away from transit. Investing in bus rapid transit works. In 2023, former Chair Hornstein said that Minnesota could become the capital of BRT in North America. That vision is not an exaggeration. We have already proven in this region, with the A line, the C line, the D line, that for far less upfront capital cost than rail, we can increase ridership with the greater frequency and speed reliability and basic amenities of BRT. Each of those 3 BRT lines achieved a 20% ridership increase and recovered their pre-pandemic ridership faster than the rest of the system. BRT embodies the greater efficiency that Representative Olson asked for earlier today. Bus neglect is a nationwide problem, and Minnesota is not immune. We can catch up simply by replicating our own success. Regions all around the country have noticed our success with our first few BRT lines. Just as Minnesota is becoming a model for cost-effective bus transit, is not the time to undermine it. We call on the legislature and this committee to defend their 2023 victory and reject any proposed rollbacks of needed investments in public transit. And thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Mr. Reginius, for your testimony. That's the last that was on the agenda. Is there anybody else here in the public that wished to testify? Okay, I don't see any. We've got a few amendments. Lead Cagle, we were not provided names on the amendments.
I'm going to take the A2.
We'll proceed with the A2 amendment, and then we'll have discussion. And
Did you want to do that before amendments or after?
not really, but
When do we get to ask?
go ahead, Representative Kraft.
Mr. Chair, my question is, when do we get to ask questions of the testifiers?
I wanted to go with the amendments, but
You want to go with the amendments first, or?
no, if you want to go now, just go ahead.
It's your call, so, okay, thank you.
Please.
So I have a question for the grocers and the retailers. And my question is, it sounds like that part of the challenge you've experienced, or the cost of this, is that $100 level, and that's required some, in some of the exemptions. If we were to do this, where we eliminated all those exemptions and reduced the fees, so let's say it was revenue neutral, would that make it substantially easier for you?
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, again, Steve Bartle with the Minnesota Grocers Association. Removal of the cap, from our standpoint, I guess from an administrative standpoint, it might be simpler, but then every delivery that included a single item from our member stores that was taxable, every delivery would then be subject to the 50-cent fee.
Okay, but my
Representative
question is if you
Kraft?
would, yeah, sorry, Mr. Chair. Yes, and I'm saying, so wouldn't well, the other point to my question was if you then reduced the fee so that the net amount was revenue neutral, so we weren't raising any more money, we're just doing this, because look, you all aren't going to want us to raise more money. We're not going to want to stop funding our roads and bridges and transit. So I'm looking here for, is there a way of finding something that is more efficient and reduces that fee, but applies it in a way that's easier to apply, applies to everything?
Right. And Mr. Chair and Representative Kraft.
Mr. Barthel.
From our standpoint, I think whether we are collecting the fee 250 times in a year or 1,000 times in the year, that administrative cost is still going to be borne by the retailer. Our point of sale system is still going to have to recognize. For us specifically as the grocery industry, because we still have a lot of items that would not be subject to the fee, but then plenty of items that would still be subject to the fee. So we still would have to track those. But like I said, whether it's a lot of transactions that are subject or just a few, that underlying administrative cost would still fall on the retailer.
Okay.
You're good?
I
Lead
had some
Cagle?
other questions if we're doing it, but.
Well, Lead Cagle, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to the testifiers, don't you already track sales taxable items?
Who would like to take that?
Chair, Lead Kegel, and really kind of fuses
Newstead.
those questions together. Bruce Newstead with the Minnesota Retailers. I think if you're talking specifically just about simplicity, no threshold and alignment with our current sales tax code would be the most obviously simplistic way. Having said that, that change, really comes back to you relative to how you're approaching Minnesotans and Minnesotans that can't avoid delivery fees. I mean, part of the threshold was to make a public policy decision on opting some people out of that. So that's really a question back to you, but simplicity, absolutely, from a less confusion perspective, but it also creates other issues that you'd want to think about.
Lead Cagle, follow-up?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess, are you willing to work with us to make those simplicities, or is this just something that the Grocers Association is just fundamentally against the retail delivery fee?
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, I don't think we take a stand on the fee itself. It's up to the legislature to determine what fees we have to collect. If the fee is there, we will collect it. But there is an administrative cost that comes along with that ultimately affects a retailer, especially a small retailer's bottom line, and those costs will eventually be borne by the consumer.
Very good. Thank you for fielding those questions. Members, I want to move to amendments. Do you have more questions? Go ahead, Lead Cagle.
If we can, maybe we just do amendments and then we can go to questioning testifiers if that's okay with everyone.
That's my preference.
Okay. Let's do-
Okay, so I don't know what the exact rule is, Lead Cagle. Somebody had asked if you're a non-voting member to offer an amendment. I don't have a problem with it, so
Okay.
I'm not really worried about it.
All right. Well, I will offer the A2 then, and this is just simply a repeal of the delivery fee. So just repealing those sections that refer to the repeal.
All right, so Lead Cagle moves the A2 amendment. Any member discussion? Representative Murphy, and make sure that your microphone is on. Previously, we got
I thought I talked loud enough.
notice from the audience that it was hard to hear you, so I don't know if it was your microphone on or maybe.
It says on. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
I just want to respond a little bit to a business that I spent 26 years in, and it was a delivery business. That's what we did. So we serviced dairy farmers. We made deliveries. In this setup that you're talking about with the delivery fee, what the problem with it is not everybody's created the same. So for instance, it would cost me about $1,500 a year to pay into this. But I compete with other businesses that don't pay it. Most of the businesses are, brick and mortar businesses that people go to. And so you're really looking at businesses that create a certain type of service, not just saying all businesses. So if they went to Fleet Farm or something like that to buy their dairy supplies instead of buying from me in the route business, in addition to that, most of our products we didn't have sales tax because we had an agriculture base. But with this, we'd have a whole new level of accounting. So it's not that I disagree that we need other forms of income. We do. But this one's a poor one because it picks winners and losers. It isn't all just about metro businesses. A lot of businesses are like mine, where they deliver, but they also have alternatives to buy from brick and mortar businesses too. That's the problem. You really back me out. You make it more advantageous for them to buy from those places and not from me. And I have to pass it along, but in some cases I can't if I'm not competitive. And so then I just eat it. So either way, it's not a good mechanism. I think there's other mechanisms that would work better, but that'd be my concern. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you to the author. The A2 is in front of us. Do you have any comments? And then we'll.
Again, members, the amendments came fast. We just got them. I appreciate it. I'm willing to work on it. But with that, I would support a no vote on this.
Vice Chair Myers.
Thank you, Chair Kosnick. I would request a roll call on this.
A roll call has been requested. A roll call will be granted. Proceed with the roll, please. Yeah, we went to the author. And you were the author of the bill. Go ahead. You can have some closing comments. Please do.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just suggest to my members a vote yes on this. We want to make sure that we have our funding. And, if this is something that, if we really want to work bipartisan through this session, let's actually offer solutions to problems instead of just getting rid of them. I think that's one of the, if we work together and try and find a medium ground on some of this stuff, I think that would be more earnest than just repealing it all. So with that, I suggest a yes vote on the A2.
The committee administrator could proceed with the roll call, please.
Chair Kosnick.
No.
Vice Chair Myers.
No.
Representative Anderson.
No.
Representative Berg.
Yes.
Representative Vogelman.
No.
Representative Green. Yes. Representative Jones.
Yes.
Representative Joy.
No.
Representative Kraft.
Yes.
Representative Murphy. No. Representative Olson. No. Representative Ream.
Yes.
Representative Sensor-Murra.
Yes.
Representative Scraba.
No.
And Representative Tabke.
Yes.
There are being 7 nays, 7 ayes, 8 nays. The amendment does not prevail. Lead Kegel, we have the A3 in front of us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll offer the
don't-
A3 as well. This is
Okay.
removing the Social Security tax repeal. I honestly don't think that this should be in this committee. This is a huge general fund cut, and, I think it should have run as a separate bill and not had jurisdiction in this committee. But that being said, I just think it's it's something that we definitely need more time to look at the impacts. I mean, it creates like a $900 million hole in our general fund. And so this is definitely not something that should be in transportation's jurisdiction. And so I would ask that we remove this and specifically deal with just the transportation stuff in the bill.
Thank you, Lead Kegel. Representative Myers?
Thank you, Chair. I would request a roll call on this.
Roll call has been requested. Roll call will be granted. Any member discussion? Representative Tabke?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Representative Joy, so why are these things, what's the reasoning behind why are these things combined? Like, why is this in the bill when there's so much work that needs to be done in transportation? Like, why did you make the choice of all the things that could be done to put these things in here?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Joy?
Yeah, as legislation gets closer and closer to the end game, we had to put things in more and more bills to get them done. Otherwise, we're taking bills and legislation were already 3 weeks past when we started. So we're just trying to get more and more things done. And as we work through these bills, we look at this. This bill to me is make Minnesota more affordable for our seniors and everybody. This is one big bill.
Mr. Chair.
Representative Anderson?
Mr.
Oh,
Chair.
I'm sorry. Did
Thank
you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I do. So who is, what thresholds of folks are paying into the Social Security tax, are paying Social Security tax right now?
What
Representative Joy?
What threshold are paying in the Social Security tax? Depends on, I guess I don't know that. I'll have to get back to you on that.
Representative Tabke?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Representative Joy, so just so you're aware, this is something that had massive changes done to it last year, and I don't remember the numbers right off the top of my head, but it's for individuals, 78,000, minimum 78,000. Kyle, do you have that for me there? So I make sure that I don't screw it up. $78,000 for single, head of household filers, and $50,000 for married separate filers, so $100,000 total there. So this was dramatically increased in the last budget cycle and the largest tax cut that would happen in the state of Minnesota history. And so if we're going to relive like where we've been instead of looking forward as to where things are going, like as you look at this is something that had dramatic changes that happened in it last year. And I'm not saying that I'm not in favor of making more changes to it. Like it's not a tax that I think that that should be in there, but you have to. I don't understand how you're doing this with moving these forward with making massive cuts in taxes in revenues without saying how you're responsibly doing this, without saying what's going to happen on the other end. And this is one of those pieces that it doesn't belong in a transportation bill, A. B, it is something that can have some good work done on it if it were to run alone and go through taxes and go through how are we doing this as a larger global budget agreement on things. So I think it's irresponsible to have it in here, and I don't understand how you expect this to go forward responsibly for Minnesotans.
Representative Joy, there's,
Yeah, this
why do you
was
have tax components in this bill?
This was a bipartisan campaign promise, you know, not picking winners and losers on social security reduction. You know, that was a bipartisan thing. You know, when you look, one of the things KSTP, I know people follow that a lot, is one of the things they talked about is what's Minnesota looking for? And number one response was reducing taxes. You know, 69% of the people say they want to eliminate tax on social security, fully eliminated, not picking winners and losers. You know, so when we run bills, we can pick them apart and say, why do we have this and that bill? Because there was losers last year. There wasn't all winners. And that's what happened with an $18.5 billion surplus and a $10 billion tax increase.
Representative Tabke? Done. Representative Anderson, please.
Thank you. I'd like to just respond to a couple really quick things, and I haven't kept all my notes, but this is really a tax bill, and there are transportation issues in here, transportation taxes, and so it's, you know, it's got to go through multiple committees. This happens to be one of the committees because it's, you know, because there's transportation sections in here. And so I think it's just, you know, it's going exactly where it should be to go along here. I want to make a quick comment about the nature of, you know, you Representative Tapke, you talked about that that we shouldn't be looking at, you know, we have to look at also how we spend, you know, where these dollars are going to come out of the budget, et cetera. I completely agree with that, you know, that we have to do that. But we raised taxes $10 billion last year, or the last biennium. We spent the entire surplus. This is a tax increase that has gone into effect, you know, and all these transportation taxes. We just can't afford it. And like Representative Joyce said, the number one issue, people can't afford all the taxes that they've been brought on. And so I think this is very timely. I think this bill is not a I can't even remember what it was last year, 1,400-page bill that was passed in the last hour of session that had every possible thing. And so for you know, the side of the aisle to complain about that there might be a couple different things in a bill is ludicrous with what happened in the last cycle. So I support this. I support the tax, the Social Security tax, you know, the complete elimination. I know they're talking about that at the federal level too. Because frankly, a $50,000 single or a $75,000 or as a couple, $100,000 adjusted gross income surcharge is not a lot of money for most people nowadays. As you have a couple, that's not a lot of money. And we are losing lots and lots and lots of retired folks out of the state. And we all know that. We've watched the numbers. So I think this is an excellent bill, and I don't support the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Anderson. Representative Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to maybe make a request, and I don't know if this will fall on deaf ears or not, but, you know, we don't need to revisit the bill at the end of last session. We can easily talk about the 52 hours of floor time that those bills were on the floor being debated before we called the question at the end of session. So I don't think we need to go there. I'd rather us go forward and look forward. So
Representative Kraft, I appreciate your comments. There was a question of why the Social Security tax elimination was incorporated in this particular bill, and that was what I believe the author and Representative Anderson were speaking to. Representative Cagle.
I'll withdraw the amendment.
Representative Olson.
Mr. Chair, I would like to pick this amendment up for the roll call purpose.
Representative Olson moves the 8-3 amendment and requests the roll call. Any further discussion?
I would suggest a yes vote on the amendment, please.
The CLA will take the roll call.
Chair Kosnick.
No.
Vice Chair Myers.
No.
Representative Anderson.
No.
Representative Berg.
Yes.
Representative Fogelman. Representative Green.
Yes.
Representative Jones.
Yes.
Representative Joy.
No.
Representative Kraft.
Yes.
Representative Murphy. No. Representative Olson.
No.
Representative Ream.
Yes.
Representative Sensamura.
Yes.
Representative Scraba.
No.
Representative Tabke.
Yes.
There being 8 nays, 7 ayes, I should probably announce that the other order, but the motion or the amendment does not prevail.
Yeah.
We have the A4 in front of us, I believe, Lead Cagle.
So I will move the A4 amendment and request a roll call. This is the removing the repeal of the indexing of the gas tax. You know, the last time we increased the gas tax, we did it because a bridge fell. And so it takes something tragic to get the attention of the legislature, apparently. And so when we were looking at this policy last year, I wanted to make sure that it didn't take another bridge falling down to get the attention of the legislature. And so the indexing of the gas tax to match to inflation, as well as capping it, was it 3% a year if inflation is higher than that? And I think, you know, because of the Trump and the Republican policies that are coming down, we're going to see talk about making life more expensive. That's what's going to be happening here in the next 2 years. And so, you know, I'm just hoping that, you know, by indexing our gas tax, that we're just actually able to keep up with our needs. Because if we don't index it to inflation, our purchasing power goes down. So thank you, and I would request a yes vote on this amendment.
Representative Jones? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I actually had a question kind of with regarding this for Mr. Joy.
For the author of the bill or
for the
or
author,
the author of the
yes.
amendment?
For the author, for the author of the bill regarding this topic.
Okay, go ahead.
So I just have a question, because you had mentioned regarding that folks are driving across state lines in order to purchase fuel because related to the gas tax increase and the indexing of it. And so I'm just curious, like, do we have numbers on the extent of the problem?
Representative Joy.
Thank you, Chair Kosnick. I have not heard of numbers. I know retailers personally, I know myself, that the gallons are down because they're going across. You know, and one of the things I want to remember is KSTP did a survey and 67% of the gas tax should not have auto inflators. That is our job as legislators, to make sure we decide every year what needs to go up and down. We didn't have an auto inflator to spend the surplus. We decided as legislators how to spend that surplus.
Representative Jones?
Yeah,
follow
thank
up?
you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick follow-up. I do think it's important that we base our decisions off of data and not just anecdotal stories when we can. Thank you.
Roll call has been granted. Oh, Representative Olson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to address the question that was had regarding gas tax. You can look online at all other states' legal statutes for what the gas tax is. If you go across the entirety of the state of Minnesota, every border that we have, except for Canada, their gas tax is in fact lower. So it stands to reason that whereas we can't tell you, oh yeah, Bjorn drove to Iowa because I live 10 miles away. Bjorn drove to Iowa and bought 12 gallons of gas. You can in fact deduce the fact that people would in fact drive somewhere else to save money.
Representative Cagle, do you want to close your amendment?
I just support the, I would just asking for support of the amendment because, like I said, we hadn't had a gas tax raised since 2013. So it's just, we've got to do something. And with the inability of legislators to understand this issue, we have to have the indexing. So I would just ask for people to support this amendment.
Could we get the roll call from the CLA, please?
Chair Kosnick,
No.
Vice Chair Myers,
Nope.
Representative Anderson,
No.
Representative Berg,
Yes.
Representative Fogelman. No. Representative Green,
Yes.
Representative Jones,
Yes.
Representative Joy,
No.
Representative Kraft,
Yes.
Representative Murphy, Representative Olson. No. Representative Ream,
Yes.
Representative Sensamura,
Yes.
Representative Scraba,
Nope.
and Representative Tabke.
Yes.
There being 7 ayes, 8 nays, Amendment 4 does not prevail. We'll move to Amendment 4. Just for the record, Amendment,
A5. A5, that was 4.
that was the A4 amendment, did not prevail. We will move to the A5 amendment. If I didn't say that right. This is your amendment, Representative Kraft. Please move your amendment and explain it.
Yeah, I move the A5, and the A5 removes the section on the motor vehicle registration tax analysis. I imagine the purpose of this is to reduce funding, and it would reduce funding for, some of this goes to the highway fund, and some of it also goes to the Department of Public Safety for things like driver's license testing, things along those lines, which we actually tried to give some additional funding last session to reduce some of the backlog. But I actually have a question, because I do want to understand, other than you want to see, a question for you.
Representative Kraft, why don't you
Joy.
move your amendment and then you
sorry.
can ask questions?
Yeah, I have a question for Representative Joy after my amendment. So that's the amendment, is to remove that section.
Okay, thank you. So Representative Kraft moves the A5 amendment, and you have a question about your amendment to the author of the bill.
Yeah, so Representative Joy, thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Joy, so what are you trying to do with this? Like, why study it? Are you just trying to look and see that our fees are comparable to others? And if so, why? Because different states have different ways of funding roads, right? North Dakota funds it differently, South Dakota funds it differently than we do, different mix of things. So I'm trying to understand why the analysis is even needed.
Representative Joy?
Thank you, Chair Kosnick. Thank you, Representative Kraft. Well, again, I've said it many times, making Minnesota affordable. We put a 36% increase on vehicle registration tabs last year. We need to study the other states and see how we're going to keep people in Minnesota. When we talk about things, maybe we got to create a new fund. Maybe instead of the electric cars that are heavier on the roads and using the roads more, only paying $75 a year compared to the average person paying $200 in road tax, maybe we got to look at that. Maybe that's a funding we got to come back together and visit.
Thank you, Representative Joy. Follow-up?
Yep, Mr. Chair, Representative Joy, we should talk about that. I've got a bill coming we can talk about. Okay, so what you're saying is that you think, I think this is what you said, that the difference in our registration fees for cars is causing people to move out of Minnesota to other places. The difference in our registration fees. Is that what you're saying? And that's why you want this analysis done versus just proposing it to be a lower price?
Representative Joy.
Thank you, Chair Kosnick. One of the things I like is reports and things to read, not just throwing legislation out and hoping it sticks, but I like to get evidence and fact finding. So I want to see a report. I mean, it doesn't change anything. It just gives us a report to look at what the states are doing and what we got to look at.
Any other member questions? Oh, Representative Berg?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I'm I'm not sure we need to put something in a bill because a single member wants a report to read. I have some concerns about this provision because I don't think any of us missed the fact that the wait times and having to drive sometimes 3, 4, 5 hours for our kiddos to take their driver's test. I mean, it was a huge issue last year that I heard from many families. During the pandemic, I had to drive my own kid to a fully different city. And so we're seeing this compounded, and the tax funds this, how our kiddos take their driver's license tests. And so essentially what this provision in the bill would do is it would spend money in order for DVS to lose money and lose funding and force families to drive all over the place, which then we get back to people are buying their gas elsewhere. So I'm having a hard time understanding why this is in here. You want this analysis. Why not just offer it as a bill and be honest about what you're doing, which is taking funds away from DPS and DVS?
Representative Joy.
Thank you, Chair Cosner. Again, making Minnesota affordable. That's what this comes down to. And this is just a report to look at everything and study where things are being spent. You know, we had an $18.5 billion surplus. We could have took care of this instead of making Minnesota less affordable.
Thank you. Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a comment about that. You know, one of the things I'd be interested in understanding is how it affects the new and used car dealers. So I just, my son is selling a 2008 Impala with 263,000 miles on it. What would you think that's worth? The bottom line is, we're better off selling it here because of the tab fees. And a new car dealer is not as in good a shape selling his brand new car here or across the border because of the tab fees. So the reason I'd be interested in seeing the information is how it affects retailers. So right now, we're in a great market for 2008 Impalas with 261,000 miles on it, because it's a great place to sell that car. But that doesn't make any difference then for the person that's in the new car business. So I want to see the numbers, because I think it's attracting it. It is raising the prices. The reason we're selling it here, that car has more value here than it does in Montana. That's why we're selling it here. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Ream.
Thank you, Chair Kosnick. Yeah, so would you want a report on all of the cuts that you're proposing here? Is that part of the plan, or are you just wanting that one study reported back, or would you be interested in having a report on everything that you've cut here?
Representative Joy.
Thank you. Well, right now we're focusing on that one report they're trying to change in the bill. But of course, we want more reporting, you know, and it's not even here, but as fraud ramps up, we need more reporting for everything we're spending money on.
Representative Ream. Good? No? Follow up?
Thank you, yeah.
Okay, no other member discussion. We have the A5.
I'd like to close that. I'm the author.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, please close that. My apologies.
Yeah, and I'd like to ask for a roll call on this.
You.
So the one thing Representative Murphy, you mentioned retailers. I don't believe that where one buys a car, I may be wrong on this, so maybe our DPS folks could clarify, has an impact of whether you have to pay the registration fee if you're going to own it in a state. Could you clarify that?
Representative Kraft, this is your close, so tell us why we should vote for your
sorry. But
amendment.
anyway, I think that the registration tax is based on where you live, not where you buy the vehicle, because this is something we pay every year. So I don't think there's an impact on retailers. So for all the reasons we've talked about, I would really urge a yes vote on this. And I'll add another one. You know, it doesn't appear that we really need for what you're, unless you're trying, which is my next amendment, unless you're trying to figure out how many people are moving away because we have a higher registration fee, this report seems to be inefficient. So I would ask for a yes vote for this for efficiency purposes, right? We don't need a report on this. If you want to propose a lower fee, then propose it. You can look at it doesn't take long to look at the fees in North Dakota and South Dakota and Canada and say, here's what they are. Ours should be this level. So, and by the way, with the amendment that you made earlier, it asked that DPS covers this from within their own funds, which could take funds away from highway stuff too, or from other things they're doing. So for an efficiency purpose on this, I'd urge yes vote.
No further discussion. Please take the roll. Roll's been requested.
Chair Kosnick.
No.
Vice Chair Andrews.
No.
Representative Anderson.
No.
Representative Berg.
Yes.
Representative Fogelman. No. Representative Green.
Yes.
Representative Jones.
Yes.
Representative Joy.
No.
Representative Kraft.
Yes.
Representative Murphy. Representative Olson. Representative Ream.
Yes.
Representative Sensor-Mura.
Yes.
Representative Scraba.
No.
Representative Tabke.
Yes. Seven ayes, 8 nays. The amendment does not prevail. That's the A5. And before us, we have the A6 amendment. Who is offering that? Representative Tabke, please introduce your amendment and move it, please. Or
Thank you very
move your
much.
amendment.
Thank you very much, Chair Kozik. I move the A6 amendment, and I'm very glad to hear that Representative Joy is a big fan of reporting and analysis, so that's a really good thing for this amendment. So what this does is I couldn't agree with you more about the goals of making Minnesota more affordable and wanting to make sure that we are doing everything we can so that working families, senior small businesses can thrive, and we obviously have different ways of getting at that, and I don't think it's wrong to say that it's the same goal and trying to get to ways that we can do this better as a state. And I don't think, however, that making massive blowing massive holes in revenue for making sure that people are able to get their kids to school, making sure that people are able to get to work easily, making sure that deliveries are able to be made on roads that work and bridges don't fall down. I don't think that is what is causing the problems here. And so I think that making sure that we know what the impacts of your extraordinary cuts in transportation funding would do to the people of Minnesota, I present the A6 amendment to have an analysis on what the funding impacts would happen because of this bill.
Thank you, Representative Tabke. Representative Joy?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you, Representative Tabke, for this. This is a friendly amendment. I encourage a yes vote.
Representative Joy encourages a yes vote, as well as Representative Tabke. And I would just say that, kind of the opposite of the previous amendment, but I would also encourage a yes vote in the fact that we do want to know what the impacts are. This one's a little bit more complicated than the previous amendment. The previous amendment was just adding transparency on where the registration tabs are in relation to neighboring states and such. So I would also encourage, this amendment's fine. Representative Tabke?
Thank you for everyone voting for the amendment.
See no other discussion. All those in favor of the A6 amendment, say aye.
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 Any opposed? The A6 amendment prevails.
I'm offering you.
Representative Lead Kegel offers the A7, I believe.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this keeps the rental fee going to the transportation advancement account and deletes the rest of the bill. I think that's a good idea. And, the more money that we can get to our small cities, our townships, and all of these these entities that haven't had dedicated funding would be great. And so I think, if we can add that to the TAA, I would be very happy.
Any member discussion? Representative Kegel moves the A7 amendment. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I support this amendment
Representative
too.
Ream, sorry.
Thank you, Chair Kosnick. I know we're talking a lot about affordability. My concern is not only affordability, but it's safety. And when I look at my district, we have a highway going through the area, Highway 7. We've had a lot of fatalities. We've had MnDOT come out and take a look at it. They've proposed adding roundabouts, and a lot of people don't realize how much these roundabouts cost. We're talking like $3 to $5 million per roundabout. But these roundabouts have made it safer for drivers. They've made it safer for kids who are walking to school. So I'm all for affordability, but we cannot sacrifice our people on the roads by cutting and slashing these budgets. We need to make sure that our roads are safe. And with traffic fatalities going up at an alarming rate, I really think our focus should be on safety. You know, if we can do this affordably, yep, great. But we cannot sacrifice people by cutting. And so I wholeheartedly would support Chair or Leader Kegel's amendment here.
Representative Joy?
Thank you, Chair Kosnick. Thank you, Representative Cagle and Ream. You know, this bill guts everything except for that part of it. Again, I'm trying to make Minnesota affordable, and that's where I'm going to stand with that. And I would encourage a no vote on this.
No roll call has been requested, so we will just proceed with the voice vote. Was there? No? Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no.
No.
The A7 does not prevail. We have before us the A8. Who wants to, Representative Tabke, proceed with the A8, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So the A8 amendment follows through with the A6 amendment, so I hope we can have everybody's support on this. What this does is make sure that as cuts are made in transportation, if we look at the makeup of the Minnesota House, I think this is extremely fair. We've got based on population as those cuts are made. So this is something that will have dramatic effects throughout our state. So if this does go through into fruition, it becomes law. What this amendment does is make sure that the cuts are felt equally by population across the state, because this is going to be hundreds of millions of dollars in cuts to if this goes forward, hundreds of millions of dollars in cuts to transportation, which will increase the number of potholes. I'm assuming there's a KSDP poll on potholes and how much people don't like potholes out there. This will increase the deaths that happen on our roads. This will increase the major issues that we have all throughout our state in the transportation world. And so by doing this, we need to make sure that we are putting that the burdens of this felt, so it's not just in one area, that this is spread out by population. So that's what this amendment does, and I look forward to everyone's support.
Representative Anderson, please.
Can I ask a question? You're the author? Okay. I don't actually get how we could do this, or the purpose. Because proportionally, let's say there was a cut of, X, okay, let's say $1 million. So you'd have to get all the way down. I mean, highway projects are not done that way. They're done, MnDOT has a whole list and they're done, and they might happen to be in your district or my district or their district, wherever, but maybe, it's done differently. But they're not going to be able to ever certainly get down to the penny, nor does this take into account anything that would be prioritized, because MnDOT prioritizes projects. On top of the fact that you're assuming that there would actually be cuts, because I think the author's intention is that that a lot of these dollars would be backfilled with some other general fund revenue, but beyond that issue. So I don't know how this could be. That's my question too, is how could this ever be done from a practical standpoint at all with MnDOT? Thank you.
Representative Tapke, can you take those questions?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Thank you, Chair Kozik and Representative Anderson. So the point of this is the fact that as massive cuts are being made and massive holes are being blown, and I would love to table this bill and move forward if there are things that are that can happen. So if someone can tell me what's going to happen to backfill these massive holes that are being blown in the budget, like that, Representative Joy hasn't said that at all today. It's just let me pull up the quotes here as to how this has gone forward. But with this, we have heard today that there is a plan for how this will move forward. We've also heard how there is future revenue that is necessary to make sure that this works. And we haven't seen anything around any of those things today as to how we hold my folks in Scott County whole, how we hold the city of Shakopee whole for what is done. And so none of those things have been discussed with this bill. So if you'd like to table it, I am more than happy to do that and continue to work on those things as this goes forward, because what's happening today is just irresponsible for the future of Minnesota's transportation system. And I don't know how anybody can vote for that without knowing where this is going and how we are actually going to hold all of our communities whole in the townships that we heard from. This is irresponsible moving this forward in this way. And so the way that this would be implemented is that you are absolutely right, that there is a list of things, but what gets cut needs to be cut equally from places where there are higher population centers and lower population centers. It needs to be cut equally across the state by population to make sure that my district is not that when these cuts happen, if Representative Joy's bill goes through, that these won't hurt my district more than they hurt your district or his district. Like, we need to make sure that our population is kept whole as this goes forward. So that's, if you're offering to table the bill so we can figure out where that revenue comes from, I am more than happy to support that with you.
Representative Ream? Jones, sorry.
Hi, thank you, Chair Koznick. I think to this point too, I think we should also, so part of this is coming from some inspiration from the federal government. You know, Trump has suggested that our transportation funds be divvied up via birth rate. And so we should, you know, if we're thinking about making cuts, that we're taking, you know, some inspiration from that. And yeah, I'll just rest with that.
Back to you, Representative Joy, or did I ever go to you? Or, I'm sorry, it's Tapke, Representative Tapke's. Representative Joy, do you have any closing comments on?
I would love to hear what's going to happen with the revenue side of things.
Please wait to be recognized. Representative Joy, do you have closing comments on this amendment?
Nope, just a no vote.
I'm sorry?
I encourage a no vote on this one.
Representative Tapke.
Thank you, Chair Kozik. I think that this entire bill is irresponsible, and as we've heard from the author, that they don't know what's going to happen to backfill when these massive holes happen. I mean, it is not something that we can go forward, and this is a way that when the hurt happens, that we can make sure that it's spread out across the state and not just in localized areas.
Thank you, Representative Tapke. Those in favor of the A8 amendment that's before us signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Nay. The A8 amendment does not prevail. Before us is, I believe, the final amendment, the A9 amendment. Not sure who's, Representative Kraft, that's yours. Please introduce and move your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the A9. It's relative to the motor vehicle registration tax analysis. And as I think I heard before, that part of the reason is that these differences in the motor vehicle registration tax are causing people to leave Minnesota, that I think that should be included in the analysis that's being asked for, if that's the purpose.
Representative Joy.
I think that's a friendly amendment. I would encourage yes vote on that one.
Any other members?
Thank you. Vote yes. Mr. Chair. Yeah.
We'll go through there. I forgot to call on you, but thank you. We're good. Those in favor of the A9 amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Say nay. The amendment passes or prevails. All right, members, we went through all the amendments. Any committee discussion? Representative Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Joy, so a question for you, and then I have some further comments. So do you believe MnDOT in the funding that they say they need, and that if this were to go forward without you filling the gap, that it would cause problems? Do you believe them?
Representative Joy.
Chair Kosnick, Representative Kraft, you know, one of the things we talk about shortfall funding, and we got a greenhouse gas mitigation. We're talking about affordable and making sure roads are safe and how to save money and make sure we use the tax dollars appropriately. But there's a greenhouse gas mitigation. The counties have came to us and everybody's came to us on road projects that can increase the engineer fee by 25 to 40%. So if we want to talk about legislation that got moved last year, that put a damper in why maybe these roads and bridges are getting underfunded, maybe it's because of these greenhouse gas mitigations that we put on of 25 to 40% increase to the engineers.
Representative Kraft.
Chair Kosnick, Representative Joy, I look forward to that discussion. That's not in this bill. I asked you a question over whether you believed MnDOT that the gaps it will cause are legitimate, like if you think we need to fill those gaps. That was my question. I'm hoping you would be willing to answer that.
Representative Joy.
Chair Kosnick, thank you. I've said I want to work on this bill as it moves along. So we will study all those numbers that, you know, are harming those groups or those people that are coming forward. I'm interested to see how much more like that greenhouse mitigation is going to put onto them.
Representative Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll take that as a yes. And I would say, 2 years ago, we made some tough decisions. No one wants fees increased. No one wants taxes increased. But we believed MnDOT that, and that roads and bridges needed it, right? And so we made those decisions to actually invest, starting down the path of what is actually needed. And they'll tell you, there's still a gap, right? And, either we deal with it or we push it off onto our kids and the next generation. And you know what? We need to stop doing that. That had been done too long in this body on roads and bridges, right? And it took a bridge falling down to actually wake us up 2008, and then it took us till 2023. So I am proud of the investment that we made to actually be legitimate about our infrastructure. Now, what I would say is, and I appreciate that, what your goal of making Minnesota more affordable. I get it. But this bill does not, you've said you want to do that. I think we should table this bill and we should continue working on it here before sending it on. Or if not, if you insist on sending this on to taxes, then my question, Mr. Chair, is will it come back here so we can actually debate the real changes that are in the transportation budget? I mean, that seems like a very legitimate request if it's still a work in progress and much to be done. Seeing as this impacts transportation so much, we should get this bill back before it goes, after it goes to taxes.
We will have ample time for debate and discussion throughout the session, the remaining part of the session. Any other members' discussion? Representative Berg, please.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I just want to very quickly point out one thing that we didn't spend a lot of time discussing, but we heard from our friend Chris Fredson from LiUNA. And I believe when we were going to hear this earlier, there were a couple other of our labor partners here. You heard Chris testify against or in opposition to this bill. And I just want to make sure that kind of as we move through this bill and then like the other bills that are going to be before us, to remember really that there are a lot of workers that are going to be impacted by bills like this. And there is not one of us whose districts are not filled with workers who are going to suffer when we pass legislation like this. So I just want to be really careful that there is not one of us that is going to be immune from how this is going to impact workers and impact them in a huge way. And so I know we talk a lot about our roads, bridges, safety, all the things. When you're talking about making Minnesota more affordable, you are speaking to it being more affordable to working families. And this kind of legislation actively works against them. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Joy, I don't see Representative Tapke, and then we'll close out with Representative Joy.
Sorry, thank you, Chair Koznick. We also, another thing we haven't talked much about here at all is the massive impacts that this will have if it goes forward on transit system and specifically our metro transit system. And so if you look at the House File 5 from the fiscal analysis from Mr. Lee, this has $200 million in the next 4 years would be pulled out of our ability to run and operate a transit system. And I think that is a terrible affront to working Minnesotans, people who need access to transit. And what do we tell people, Representative Joy, when they're worried about making sure that the trains are going to be there and making sure that the bus that they rely on to get to work, when you're pulling hundreds of millions of dollars out of the system, like how, and you don't have a plan for backfilling that and making sure that the system is operationally whole. Like how, what do we say to people with these things?
Representative Joy?
Thank you, Chair Koznick. One of the things we're hearing is, you guys are going down the side and telling us how this is a bad bill. The exciting part of this year is it's going to be bipartisan by the time we get to this table, because we actually going to have a voice for all of Minnesota this year. Like the last 2 years, half of the state didn't get a voice. It was all ran by the Democrats. So this is exciting to continue to work on this bill and be able to work it as a bipartisan thing to get it to the floor. So I'm excited. And we have to figure out how to backfill these. We can do that as a group, bipartisan work. But the last 2 years, we didn't get much of that work. And so the things that came through, like the greenhouse gases for a 25 to 40% increase, and what's going on when the Democrats spent $18.5 billion and raised taxes $10 billion, and they're still saying they're short, we put our money in the wrong places, I think. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Koznick, I appreciate that, but you still also haven't answered the question as to what do we tell people, like if this moves forward, like how, and what's the hurry on getting this? Like we have months of session left and you are putting forward a bill that is irresponsible and doesn't have the other, it's not balanced. It's not there. And I couldn't possibly agree with you more for exciting ways where we can work together and find bipartisan ways of doing that. This isn't that. Like, it's just not that. So I don't know why it has to have the hurry on it today. We can absolutely continue to work on it and could table it and not move forward with it today and keep working on this so that we have something that doesn't blow massive holes in the budget and have people with broken axles and people who aren't able to get the transit rides that they need. Metro mobility would suffer from this. Like every single aspect of the transportation system would suffer from your bill without having it being balanced. So I just wish that we could hold off on that and not move it so fast.
Thank you, Representative Tapke. Any other committee members? I guess, no, I think we're good. Representative Cagle?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to point out, Representative Joy, do you know what the food delivery support funds?
The food delivery support?
Representative Joy?
Sorry, Chair Koznick. No, you can enlighten me with it.
That funds, thank you,
Representative
Mr. Chair. That funds programs like Meals on Wheels. So that, that's the only, like one of their only dedicated sources of funding is, and so I I would really encourage you to understand what you're cutting before we cut it. Because this isn't fake money. This isn't a shell game. These are real dollars, and when we take it from one place, it impacts somebody else. It's not just magic. And so, it also affects the amount of money that we can bond for as well with trunk highway bonds. And I was just looking at bill introductions today, and Chair, you have a $40 million trunk highway bonding bill that just came forward. And so, and I think too, one of the big concerns about this is,
Want to sign on to it?
not my district. Although I do have 35 and 10 in mine too. But one of my also other concerns is that, a lot of the questions that our members had, you weren't able to answer about like, where is this money coming from? And just kept referring back to the GOP talking points of trying to make life more affordable. And that's not an answer. These are real dollars that we need to know what's being affected. Is it, is my grandma, well, actually, my grandma just passed away recently, but she was getting food delivery support up in Silver Bay, up in Representative Scrabach's district. And so, like, these are real programs that affect real people. And, this bill was also previously introduced in the unconstitutional and illegal sham session. So I'm kind of curious about why it hasn't been worked on in the past 4 weeks. And then just another, kind of observation. We all kind of have come into this session, saying that we need to work bipartisan to pass any bill. Any bill needs 68 votes. This bill is not something that's going to get 68 votes. This is a hyper-partisan bill that is not serious legislation. And I'm not going to impugn motives, but I think people can read between the lines, when some of this stuff comes out on campaign literature. And so I just, I think that this is not a serious piece of legislation that's blowing a huge hole in our transportation budget and undoing a lot of the work that we did last year to make transformative investments in our transportation system. And when it comes to it, 90% of the I don't know if 90, whatever, most of the testifiers came up and were against this bill. We're talking about labor. We're talking about counties. We're talking about cities. We're talking about townships. This is their dedicated source of revenue. And if you don't tell me how you're going to backfill it, then I don't think that this bill should move along. And so with that, I would encourage my members a no vote.
Thank you, Representative Cagle. Representative Joy, go to your close and then we'll go to a vote.
Thank you, Chair Kosnick and members. Thank you for the discussion today. I look forward to working with you on this. When we talk about taking money from things and causing road projects more, we heard from the counties, 25 to 40% increase on road projects with their greenhouse gas emissions. If they were serious about cutting some things and helping the money go further, they would have probably looked at that legislation and had us at the table. So as we move forward with this is a bill, it's a work in progress, but this bill is going to make Minnesota more affordable. I understand there's backfilling, but there was $18.5 billion spent last year with a $10 billion increase in taxes, and we still don't have the answers of how much more road funding we need. Thank you, Chair Kosnick.
Thank you, Representative Joy. Representative Joy, the motion is, and I will move it for you, House File 5 as amended to the Tax Committee.
Is there a
Yes. No, but then we gotta pass it out. Yeah, so we will proceed with the vote.
Chair Kosnick.
Yes.
Vice Chair Myers.
Aye.
Representative Anderson.
Yes.
Representative Berg.
No.
Representative Fogelman. Yes. Representative Green.
No.
Representative Jones.
No.
Representative Joy.
Yes.
Representative Kraft.
No.
Representative Murphy. Representative Olson.
Yes.
Representative Ream.
No.
Representative Sensor-Mura.
No.
Representative Scraba.
Yes.
Representative Tabke.
Nope.
There being 8 ayes, 7 nays, House File 5, as amended, is moving to the Committee on Taxes and passes. Okay, members, thank you, Representative Joy. Thank you for the extra time today. Little organizing complication, so we would have normally figured it out and done that in the normal committee time. So thank you for the public that stayed with us today and members for your work. Thank you to the staff as well. And we will meet on Wednesday at the normal committee time. The meeting is? Yep. The rules are out. The meeting is adjourned.